Afternoon, Paul. Your group has quietly moved back into the top 10 in the power play. I mean, what do you think about the way the new structure of the first unit is going, and what has it meant to have the second unit also contribute those
Yeah,
8 goals? You said early in the year that that was your goal to have both
right.
being productive. What's it meant to have it actually transpire?
Yeah, I think that's the reason, right? You've got to get enough from your so-called second unit that propels you into that top 10. It can't be just one, because if you got one unit, you can set on that look, right? Usually teams that run one unit for the full 2 minutes has either an Edmonton setup where they've got two or three really, incredible offensive players, or you've got two units that you can spread it around a little bit. I think there's a comfort level with it now. They're moving the puck a little differently. They've spent enough time. This has been an unusual year, Ken, because we haven't had a big run of power plays, right? So we have no practice time, so you don't actually get to feel the puck, to work on it as much as you like. So I'm pleased with where it's at, especially in that we haven't had a big run of them yet.
We'll go next to Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press. Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks, Gregor. Thanks, Paul. Just sort of a bigger picture question about the division. Paul, I'm reminded, I think it was a few weeks ago, you told us that, you felt that the real race here wasn't going to start kind of till the end of February, beginning of March. You look at the Canadian division right now and things seem to be tightening up. Calgary and Vancouver have kind of gotten back into it. I take it, number one, that doesn't surprise you very much. And number two, what does it just kind of set the stage for the final 7 weeks here?
Yeah, I mean, there's 6 teams in a playoff fight, and handling that up and down is the critical piece. You looked at Vancouver and you kind of knew their schedule was so heavily weighted. Everybody's got 3 or 4 games on them now, and that there was a cost to them for that, right? They were gonna. Other team schedules, for the most of us, were lighter in the front, and we kind of took advantage of that with Vancouver, that they would fight their way back in now. And it goes to that whole playoff mentality, right? You can't carry a loss with you, and you've got to get back. And it's just, you don't have that emotional well of your fans, and even the fans on the road games, right? You don't have that here. So being able to be consistent, understand how you're playing, and being able to be consistent with your emotions, find that place where you can get that energy is the key piece. So it's a playoff series where you really have to rely on yourselves for your own emotion, being able to control them and have an even keel over the years critical now.
We'll go next to Kelly Moore from CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hey, good afternoon, Paul. Not trying to be a Debbie Downer here, but
Okay.
just in terms of when you have a response goal scored against you, like the other night against Edmonton, went back on, I think it's the 5th time, and I used 2 minutes as kind of the magic line for that. Do you have, when you score a goal, do you have a certain line that you want to get out there to prevent that response goal from being scored, or is there a certain mentality or mindset, especially with things getting as desperate as they
Yeah,
are now?
I think in the past I would have said yes. I would have. You'd see an awful lot of Lowry and Scheifele come over the boards in the past, but I don't now, because I think the lines to the 2 other lines, there's so much, on Dubois' line, those weapons, can get you a goal lead, but Thompson's line's been so strong coming off the bench, and certainly in D zone coverage faceoff. So we don't. 5 is not a big number for me. In that we've been pretty resilient with that. Our game. I don't feel that our game changes after we score or they score. I think we've been pretty darn good at coming off the bench, handling the goal, and being pretty darn consistent with it.
We'll go next to Sarah Lesky from TSN. Go ahead, Sarah.
Paul, just the lineup question. Will you go with the same lineup as what we saw last game? And then also, Pierre-Luc Dubois stayed out on the ice longer than any of the regulars today. I'm sure if you know that, but appeared to be working on his shot a lot. Is that maybe just evident of a young guy trying to find another or get another element of his game going right now?
I think so. The first question, same lineup. Connor Hellebuck will play goal. We're all trying to find the right way to stay ready with as many off days as we feel we need to have. So tomorrow's a travel day for us. We won't skate. There are players that like skating in between. I think you're going to see us here in the latter part of the trip back to game notwithstanding, that we'll start to have more and more guys skate on the off days. They're all trying to find what works for them. He wanted a little more here today, so we let them, right? That's all part of being a young guy and learning how to handle an NHL schedule.
Go next to Jack Michaels from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Jack.
Paul, Winnipeg, the perception is its strength is depth of scoring. You can play all four lines and you're explosive. I'm wondering how you felt your club has played when it's not there offensively, and how your comfort level in those 1-1 games where there's just a handful of scoring chances for either side.
Yeah, I think we're learning to do that. So we would be a team that can put offense up. But we played a whole lot at 1-goal games to start the year. Like we haven't had the big leads and the big blowout leads, or, you know, we've had one that went against us, but we've been in those tight games right now. And I think we're on the same path that, geez, probably 3 or 4 teams are in the North. Edmonton would be one. Toronto would be the other one, that they've got lots of confidence in their ability to score goals. So being able to grind out those tough games. So even in a 2-1 loss, we think there's places we can generate a little bit more offense, but we're happy with our game. I think our last 4 games have been smart. So we're and this goes against an earlier answer. I said when there's 6 teams now that are all fighting for it, but as where we stand right now, this will be our 9th straight game against a team in the playoffs. 7 of those have been on the road. So, you know, you're looking for a little bit of that road hockey. And these are, you know, we've got their playoff teams, but you've got Edmonton in there and you've got Toronto in there. There's really explosive offensive teams. I'm happy with where our game is, our last 4, and we've split them. I like the way we've played.
We'll go next to Scott Billick from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Scott.
Morning, Paul, or good afternoon, I suppose, there and here. You said earlier this week when I asked you about Nikolai, there's sort of about an optimal kind of time on ice sort of thing for him. How does that extend to everybody else on the roster? I mean, I assume, you know, most players want to play as much as they can. Dylan DeMello said that. Blake Wheeler said, you know, roughly 18 to 20 is kind of his sort of sweet spot. Do you have a number like that for every player on your team, and do you try and hit those, or is it just game dependent?
Yeah. So there's certain players that wear and tear is on your mind, right? Nikolai's not a big man, and speed and quickness are the key piece. So there is, you know, he's a great player. I want to get him on the ice as much as I can, but I also want to be mindful of when that extra 3-4 minutes starts to really deteriorate the overall game, and it's stacked up. So this is a different animal than we've ever seen before. The original idea, and we talked about this going back to February, we knew what the March and April were going to look like. We knew we had to have 4 lines that were able to play. So there might be a slight adjustment for some guys, or a minute and a half off, but we had to get to this setup that we are now. I'd like to keep everybody, you know, if I can keep Mark and Blake in and around that 20 and just under, that's the idea. But the power plays and penalty kill will have a whole lot to do with that, right? We've been able to keep our numbers right. There just haven't been a lot of either. So we've run the 4 lines basically straight through games. If we're chasing it, and you saw it last game, we get to 3 lines in the last 10 minutes of the 3rd period, or if I can find an advantage maybe earlier, I'll do it earlier. But we need this year more than ever a slightly bigger view of your season. And you can't, in the regular season, with the exception of a couple spots, you can run your bench as hard as you want. You give them a couple of days off, they're fine. We don't have a couple of days off till the 3rd week in April, so we have to be pretty mindful of where we're at minutes wise.
Go next to Kelly Moore from CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hey, Paul, in the second period of this series, it seems that's where Edmonton has generated a lot. On the video review, is Dave playing Connor and Leon a little bit more in the middle period than he has in the first and the thirds, from what you recollect? Or, you know, what would you attribute
more of a stretch team. It is harder to defend in the second period just on the line changes alone. You're going to see most teams' numbers change a little bit in that second period. If they're down, if they're chasing the game, you see those guys come out as pairs quite a bit more often. They've run that. But, you know, they run more flippers maybe in the second period, and they'll stretch a little bit more. But each game has had its own unique idea to it. And, you know, we just, when they're down, you see more them. And when they're up, they'll be careful with it, right? They're in the same spot that we are. They got to be careful with those minutes too.
Just a couple more for Paul. We'll go next to Jim Matheson. Go ahead, Jim.
Paul, Connor McDavid is shooting the puck way more this year, and it appears when Brissois talked last game, he's difficult to pick up his shots because he's stick handling so fast before he shoots the puck. It's like he's trying to go through pylons, and he changes the angle. Have you noticed that with Connor?
I thought he's always moved the puck at a high rate, right? That he is constantly shifting. I don't know if there's a change in it, but he and Kyle Connor and Nikolai Ehlers, the puck comes off their stick before a goalie maybe understands that. I mean, his hands are so fast that he'll get it from his, the backhand of his stick to the front to off so quickly that it's a real challenge for the goalers. And then the accuracy of it, right? He's not blowing it over the net when that happens. He's picking his spot. This guy's got an elite set of hands. I don't even know if that's a fair qualifier. I mean, there's probably not another set of hands like that. And that's why I can't figure out why anybody would want to play goal ever.
Final question is Scott Billick from the Sun. Go ahead, Scott.
Hey, Paul. On this side of things, some might suggest that Josh Morrissey's not playing the best hockey right now. Just different things that are happening on the ice and that sort of thing. I guess, what is your take on Josh right now, where he's at and how he's doing?
Yeah, so I thought he had a slightly down year last year. And then I thought the game that he played in Toronto might have been the best game he's played for us. This isn't points driven. I mean, in terms of his gap and killing plays and stopping that offense. So I think he's closer back to being his best. He's, he had a couple of pucks, the hard rim got by him, the backdoor play the other night that are I would suggest are unusual. And we've moved his partner around a whole lot, not necessarily related to him. So coming is the right word, I hope. He's had a couple of, if you watch over a season, there'll be a run of, and it happens to every player, where you don't mind their game, but just some bad stuff starts to happen around them that they get the minus on, that when they're on their A game, that you don't see happen. Like I said, I still have that game in Toronto on my mind, and I'm watching him play and I'm thinking, not only is he as good as he's ever been, that he's better than he's ever been in that game. So I think it's there. I think he's just around the corner from that happening.